I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Netanyahu's coalition teeters on the brink of collapse. The Palestinians snub the White House's invitation to talk about the Gaza crisis. And one Israeli group sets a record for participation in the Jerusalem Marathon. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu's coalition is teetering on the verge of a breakdown despite a 2-hour meeting yesterday with ultra-Orthodox Knesset members. The government is trying to avert possible early elections all over a major disagreement as to whether or not ultra-Orthodox men should also be obligated to join the Israeli military. Netanyahu has reportedly asked the Haredi parties to draft their own bill for a law to exempt Haredim from the draft, despite Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman's claim that he would refuse to back any bill that didn't come from his own ministry. Making this showdown even more tense, Lieberman has refused any kind of compromise on the ultra-Orthodox draft at all. Meanwhile, Netanyahu's other key coalition leader, Finance Minister Moshe Kahlon, has similarly threatened to bolt from the coalition if the budget was not passed by the end of the week. Now, some speculate that Netanyahu, who's currently embroiled in numerous corruption scandals, may actually be secretly pushing for early elections, especially since polls indicate growing public support. But others say this may only delay the inevitable if the prime minister is ultimately indicted with criminal charges, which could happen in the coming months or years. But with fresh clashes between police and the ultra-Orthodox erupting over the weekend, this is clearly an issue that isn't going anywhere, no matter what the coalition looks like. Here with us now for more on the ongoing crisis in the coalition is Akiva Bigman, an investigative journalist at Israel Hayom. Thanks for joining us. So, how big is this crisis?
Well, I don't know exactly how big it is. I do assume it's not a fake crisis, like some said, because there are real political issues on the ground. And the Haredi issue is serious. It has nothing to do with the political schedule. It's a legal schedule because there was a verdict by the Supreme Court dealing with this issue, so they have to have some kind of solution for their specific problem. This becomes a law. The law becomes debatable, and it threatens the coalition. So it's real in that sense. So the question is, how are the ultra-Orthodox being too hard-headed, and how is this going to end? Well, this is a stage that everybody speculates. Nobody really knows how it's going to end. There are a lot of different motivations inside the coalition, different powers working on politics. I just want to say about one thing that people talk about all the time. Netanyahu has this maybe this motivation to hold elections because of investigations and so forth. I think there's one important thing that I think is people are missing in the picture, specifically politicians are missing, that Israel has a basic law dealing with a situation when the prime minister is under investigations. And according to this law, which is a basic law, which in Israel considers some kind of a constitutional law, the prime minister doesn't have to resign until the process ends with a decision of the court, and even has the right to appeal. And this law was written for a very specific reason. And the reason is to avoid the situation we see today. To avoid a situation when you can run a police investigation. It didn't even get to the general attorney yet.
Right. Well, that's something that's separate from kind of the internal crisis that we're seeing with the ultra-Orthodox here. My question is, what kind of compromise could be made in regards to this issue? What is the government ultimately going to do to solve this? Right. So, I don't know more than others know because I have no inside information. But what they're talking about is to maybe pass a bill in one of the first votes, and then to get the budget through and figure out the rest of it and further on. But that really depends on the forces working on the coalition. And I think the investigations are important because this kind of bangles up the whole political situation, and everybody pushes and pulls. And that's why I think it's a shame actually that people don't just say, well, according to law, the investigation should not affect our politics. This is what the law was meant to achieve, to accomplish, and we should obey the law. Right. And instead, we're allowing the law the police investigations to actually disrupt our political process. Well, I guess the final question here is are we going to see early elections take place? Is that within the interest of the prime minister to do that?
Well, I don't think it's really in his interest, but we never know. These political issues, you only know where you begin, you never know where you end, because there's so many powers and different factors that pull in and play the game. Maybe there are like secret deals going around behind the back between different forces that maybe want to have elections and they, promote some kind of deal afterwards. You never know.
All right, well, we're just going to have to wait and see.
We'll wait
and
see, exactly.
All right, thank you for joining us, Akiva.
Thank you.
As the humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to surge towards disaster, the United States has just summoned a brainstorming session in Washington. They're trying to find an immediate solution to the ongoing suffering of nearly 2 million Gazans. But the Palestinian Authority has actually turned down a direct invite from the White House to attend the talks. ILTV's Aaron Porras has more on the story. Hi, Aaron.
All right, thank you very much, Natasha. And yeah, this decision by the Palestinian Authority comes amidst ongoing rift between the Palestinian Authority and the White House, specifically over Trump's December decision to recognize Jerusalem and move the embassy, and then later his cuts of more than half of the United States funding to UNRWA.
Now, the question here is, why wouldn't the Palestinian factions want to at least try to talk to the U.S. about possibly changing sanctions that exist on the ground in regards to the Gaza Strip?
It's a pretty complicated answer, actually, because we're talking about, how the Palestinian Authority is listening to their own people, and they're worried about, Abbas would be afraid of looking like a traitor, but then at the same time, he's under pressures from Egypt and Saudi Arabia to maybe accept a deal, things like that. But aside from that, you also have Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, who thinks that this is just an American attempt to exploit the situation in Gaza by relieving Israel of any liability in the area and things like that. And the average Palestinian, according to the polls, actually agrees. They don't see the United States as a partner in peace, and they don't see the two-state solution as a viable option at the moment.
All right, well, I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what happens, as per usual. All right. The threat of a war on Israel's northern border with Lebanon became very real earlier this year when two border disputes quickly went volatile. Though many have been dreading the worst, it looks like we can set aside those fears for now. The UN has just confirmed that they've been mediating talks between Israel and Lebanon almost every day to ensure that war doesn't erupt.
Well, what I see is that there is a full engagement from all the sides, and there are been meetings almost on a daily basis. The dialogue is open. No one has ever walked out from these meetings. So I see that there is a will to preserve stability and to find solutions.
Though this certainly comes as a bit of a relief, the growing threat of Hezbollah, backed with weapons and money from Iran, remains a concern. Tensions between the Lebanese government and Israel first hit a fever pitch when Israel began constructing a border wall along the Blue Line border to the north, which Lebanon claimed breaches its territory. At the same time, however, Lebanon began an offshore energy project in a part of the sea claimed by Israel. The ensuing standoff potentially marked the first steps towards a military escalation, but apparently both sides realized the consequences of a war would outweigh the last decade of relative calm.
This stability has been beneficial for everyone, and not only from one side. And I think that until now, beside the heightened rhetoric, I would see that the reality on the ground is different, and there is no appetite for instability or for war.
Anti-Semitism has been on the rise throughout Europe and the United States. Now, a troubling claim has just been made by Russian President Vladimir Putin in a one-on-one interview with NBC over the weekend. When asked about alleged Russian meddling in the 2016 election, Putin apparently suggested that maybe, quote, Jews, but with Russian citizenship, had actually compromised the election. Israeli lawmakers have already begun to denounce the Russian president's disturbing choice of words, but many critics are wondering why U.S. President Donald Trump has yet to do so as well. It's no secret that he's under investigation for possibly colluding with Russia to sway the U.S. election. This comes amidst growing blowback from Poland's controversial Holocaust law, which some say whitewashes Poland's role in helping the Nazis execute Hitler's horrific final solution. Israel's ambassador to Poland, Anna Azari, has just announced that anti-Semitism is rising in Poland, prompting a Polish senator to say, quote, maybe we have to ask this lady to leave the country. On top of that, anti-Semitic vandalism in Holland has just hit a 10-year high. And as if things weren't bad enough in Europe, the Anti-Defamation League says things may be even worse in the United States. The latest report says that anti-Semitic incidents have skyrocketed by 57% in 2017, a two-decade record high. All right, another sharp turn has just been made in the case of 54-year-old Malka Lifer, a former Australian schoolteacher living in Israel that's been accused of 74 accounts of suspected sex abuse. Despite Lifer's claim that she cannot be prosecuted because she's mentally ill, the Israeli Supreme Court has just ruled that she will remain in custody during her stay in a psychiatric hospital. This disturbing case has taken several bizarre twists and turns over the years. After facing dozens of accounts of sex abuse, including child sex crimes against her own former students while she was a principal, Lifer apparently fled to Israel to escape jail. She was trailed by Israeli investigators for years, and eventually police called off the investigation when it seemed as if the suspect was mentally ill, and thus ineligible for prosecution. However, details recently surfaced suggesting that she may have been faking those symptoms to elude the police, as well as extradition back to Australia. This new ruling will remain in place until a judge determines whether or not she can be released on house arrest.
האם אפשר לסמוך שלא תברח מהארץ? זו השאלה היחידה. מי שמכיר את הדברים יודע שמעבר לעובדה שהיא לא הפרה את האמון ולא בגדה באמון, גם אין לה לאן לברוח, היא מבוקשת בכל העולם.
Israel's mentally ill clause in the law will possibly make incoming court proceedings slow and complicated. But still, human rights groups are eager for this case to be heard and for justice to be reached as soon as possible, given the gravity of the charges.
At least for now, she won't be getting out tomorrow morning, so that's a tremendous relief, and hopefully things will keep moving forward. Hopefully the judge will make a decision that she will have to stay under some level of observation, incarcerated, whether it's in prison or in a psychiatric facility, until these proceedings finish, hopefully soon.
Lifer holds Israeli citizenship, which has so far allowed her to remain in the country and evade trial in Australia. But with this case now open once again and very much in the public eye, that may all be about to change. All right, well, it may have officially ended a few days ago, but even now it feels like the world is still celebrating International Women's Day. We saw all kinds of incredible demonstrations and activities here in Israel, but unfortunately the festivities were somewhat dampened when the IDF removed a special Women's Day video from the internet mere hours after releasing it on social media. ILTV's Brett Allen Smith is here with this story. So, Brett, the video is no longer online, right?
Right. Unfortunately, that is still the case. But we do have a copy of it now that we can play here if we want to go ahead and pull that up and kind of watch it side by side as we talk. So, right, as you see here, what the Army did for Women's Day actually was really special. It's a video celebrating all the different ways that women contribute to the IDF. And over the video are voiceovers from actual female soldiers repeating the kind of criticisms they always get, oh, women can't be warriors, what about their children and their husbands and stuff like that. And it's intercut with this footage of military women just, kind of...
kicking butt in uniform.
We can say that. We can say kicking butt.
So, it was really inspiring to see how different countries and different groups celebrated Women's Day, not just in Israel, but all over the world. And I feel like this year, that day actually had a much bigger meaning than it usually does with the Me Too movement, so many different movements.
Right.
But even with all of that, seeing these images here with those words is really unique. I mean, you don't really see women in the military anywhere else.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's really unique to Israel, and that's kind of exactly why so many people are frankly so troubled that the video got pulled.
So what happened there? Why was this decision made?
Right, so the Army's official statement says that the video didn't go through the proper approval channels, but what's looking more likely here is that conservative religious groups actually pressured the Army to pull the clip. Because let's face it, female enlistment in the IDF is still a red line for them. It's still very controversial, and if they did actually sway the government to nix the video, that says a lot about what kind of influence this minority group really has.
Right, well, and actually only 8% of women are in combat roles in the Army. So it's not such a big number.
It's not huge, growing maybe, but still a long to go.
Yeah, but from a PR perspective, you would think that Israel would want to show this. It's really cool to see women in combat.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to say women holding guns, but the reality is we have women serving side by side with men.
And that is that talking point, that issue is one of the biggest talking points in the world right now. I mean, what kind of message does that send about Israel compared to the rest of the world right now? In Europe, in the US, equality laws, gender equality in the workplace, everyone's talking about that now. And I wonder if, especially with the video being pulled like this so quickly, if that discussion is really happening in Israel the way it needs to be.
Right, absolutely. Well, I mean, I hope that they put this video back up. It's a little ironic that a video with so much female empowerment and such a loud message was silenced, but I guess that's what happened. All right, thanks for joining us, Brett. Sure. All right, now this is shocking. Over 22% of Israelis over the age of 18 smoke, and that statistic is from 2017. One organization is doing all it can to fight the habit, and joining us with more is Jeff Steyer, Senior Fellow with the Consumer Choice Center's anti-smoking campaign here in Israel. Thanks for joining us. All right, so tell us a little bit about the statistics here in Israel. I kind of gave a general statistic, but you probably have better data.
Smoking rates throughout the world have been going down. In the US, in the UK, in developed countries, they've been going down. But strangely, in Israel, they've been moving in the wrong direction. More people are smoking. It was under 20% the year before last. Now it's over 22%. And cigarette smoking is the #1 preventable cause of disease in this country, in almost every developed country. And what we want to do is we want to find ways to lower the rate of smoking.
Right. Well, I mean, the question is there any information as to why that number is growing here in Israel? There's so many, startups coming out of the country that are anti-smoking, so why are more people smoking?
Well, a lot of people are anti-smoking, but the question is, are the tools that we're giving people to quit good enough? And one of the most respected professors in public health in Israel, Leah Rosen at Tel Aviv University, did a study and found that very few people are being helped by the gum and the patch and the pharmaceutical products that are available. Only 8%, she said, of people who use those products a year later continue not to smoke.
So what is the answer here? How do you stop smoking?
Well, there are a lot of different ways to stop smoking, and as everyone knows, it's very difficult. But over the last decade, we have learned that there are lower risk products that are not safe, that kids shouldn't use, but they're a lot less harmful than cigarette smoking. We know the danger from smoking is not the nicotine, but it's the burning of the tobacco and inhaling it. Public Health England did a study, and they did a very big analysis, and they found that e-cigarettes are 95% less harmful than smoking. Yet in Israel, very few people know about e-cigarettes, and when they hear about it, they hear that, oh, it's just as dangerous as smoking. This morning, I testified at a Knesset hearing about IQOS, which is a heated tobacco product. It's, again, not safe. Kids shouldn't be using it. But it reduces the amount of exposure, according to the FDA, significantly to some of the most harmful chemicals that you get from cigarette smoking. Yet for some reason, the public health community in Israel vehemently opposes these products.
Well, so it's an issue in itself, but is there any legal recourse that can be made to address this issue? What is the advice that you give to Israel right now?
Well, Israel has to change course. Countries like the US, like the UK, are embracing this concept of tobacco harm reduction, of lowering the risk from smoking by not smoking and using lower risk products, many of which have nicotine, but nicotine is not the harmful component. It's the addictive component, but nicotine itself is not particularly harmful to adults other than pregnant women. So the goal is to move people down what we call the risk continuum, to lower risk products, from cigarette smoking to something like IQOS, a heated product, or better yet, an e-cigarette, which is a product that heats nicotine and you get a vapor. These products are significantly less harmful. The Israeli public needs to know about these products and needs to know the truth about them so that they can make informed decisions to lower their risk. And so far...
And so we can bring those numbers down, because it's pretty shocking.
And bring down the risk. And I think that's the goal of public health today, needs to inform Israelis about the lower risk products today. Unfortunately, the Israeli public health community is failing the public, and we need to change that.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. All right. The Oscars are old news here in Israel, because this weekend, the Israeli Academy for Film and Television finally held its annual award show. Well, surprise, surprise, the Israeli hit series Fauda took home a record 11 awards, as if it hasn't already been making waves across the globe. First of all, take it in. The Oscars aren't the only award show on this planet you should be keeping your eye out for. Every year, Israel has its very own mini Oscars, where the country gets to celebrate the amazing films and shows that the Americans are just too behind to appreciate. This year, Fauda stood out the most, an international TV sensation that dramatizes the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The series has already been picked up by Netflix, and here in Israel it nabbed Best Drama, Best Direction, Best Screenplay, and Best Actor in Drama. The list goes on. But don't get us wrong, Israel has a lot more to offer than just Fauda. The comedy show Shababnikim was awarded 4 prizes for its hilarious look into the lives of wayward Orthodox youth. The incredible journalist Ilana Dayan took home a Lifetime Achievement Award for her investigative journalism program, Uvda. But she wasn't the only strong woman standing out. The award for Best Actress in Drama was surprisingly split in 2, going to both Batchen Sabag for her role in the show Dumb, and Magi Azarzal for the series Virgins. At least the Israeli Academy Awards had something in common with the Oscars. More women were finally recognized for their impact. Nearly 200,000 Jews lived in Spain during the 1400s, but that all changed when the majority fled into exile during the Inquisition of 1492. The Spanish government is trying to correct that injustice now by offering citizenship to formerly Spanish or Sephardic Jews who can prove that their families lived in Spain at the time. And ILTV's Latin American correspondent Joy Gavijon is here with Spain's latest update. So what's going on, Joy?
Thanks, Natasha. Well, this plan has actually been up and running for a few years now. It was first started in 2015 and was supposed to expire this October. But now the Spanish government has just voted to extend the deadline for another year. And that means that Sephardic Jews have another year to apply for the citizenship, and only if they can prove that they speak Spanish and have a special connection with Spain.
Well, I remember when they first opened this plan, and before that, the whole process was much harder. Before 2015, you actually had to do all that, plus actually live in Spain, yes. But I understand that now you don't have to live in Spain, right?
Correct, yes. And on top of that, before, you also had to give up whatever nationality you had to accept your Spanish passport. But now you can just add your Spanish nationality to whatever else you already have.
So talk to me about what else you need in order to prove that you're a Sephardic Jew and that you qualify for this.
Yeah, the biggest thing is that you need your Jewish heritage officially verified by the Spanish Federation of Jewish Communities. Okay. Or in some cases, you can use your local rabbi. But the Spanish Inquisition was over 500 years ago, so even if your ancestors were originally Jewish, you may not actually be Jewish anymore.
But you still might qualify, right?
Exactly, but because it was so long ago, that's also why it's so hard to verify your heritage. Mm-hmm. This program has been open for a few years already, but so far, only about 6,000 have actually been able to get the Spanish passports, which is probably why the government is extending the application date for another year.
Absolutely, because there are so many Sephardic Jews. And I wonder if I could get my hands on one of those passports myself. I'm going to have to look back and see what my ancestors were up to. All right, Joy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, this weekend, a whopping 35,000 people ran in the Jerusalem Marathon, but the event was more than just a sight to see. The participants helped a very special Israeli organization break a record to support people with disabilities. The Shalva National Center works to provide care, inclusion, and support to the disabled. And this year, they managed to get 1,500 people to participate in the Jerusalem race. Soldiers, law enforcement officers, firefighters, and celebrities all ran side by side, breaking the record of participants affiliated with the organization in the Jerusalem Marathon. Even the Israeli Olympic medalist Ori Sasson took part.
So we're here in Jerusalem. It's the second time we do it. I'm doing it with Shalva, and I'm really excited. The atmosphere is crazy. And for me, those kids, they are the real champions.
The Shalva team ran special segments of the route that were designated for people with special needs, all to help raise money for the association. This year, runners from 72 different countries took part in the Jerusalem Marathon, which started next to the Knesset, making its way past Jerusalem's Machne Yehuda Market, Mount Scopus, and the Old City. 27-year-old Kipchoge Shadrach from Kenya was this year's winner, finishing the race in just 2 hours and 21 seconds. But the majority of the runners were actually Jerusalemites themselves. All right, and now for our Hebrew word of the day. Well, speaking of marathons, today's word is for possibly the most important thing you need if you're a runner. No, it's not Gatorade and it's not even water. Today's word is chamtzan, which is Hebrew for good old oxygen. What happens when two chamtzan, or oxygen molecules, become joined at the hip? Well, you get humanity's most important chemical element, lovable, breathable chamtzan. While you're running, swimming, doing jumping jacks, or just playing tag, chamtzan is what keeps your heart pumping and your muscles flexing. And remember, just because you can't literally see chamtzan, it doesn't mean it isn't there. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy and somewhat cool with a low of 12 or 53 degrees Celsius, but tomorrow's temperatures are expected to rise. The high should sit around 69 or 21 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.44 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.